I was right there.
Okay, welcome to the 44th Annual State Construction Conference. Woo! We made it. One thing I'll say is we were full for in-person registration on February 7th. That corresponds with early bird registration. So it seems like every year the in-person registration is filling up quicker and quicker. So that's a good thing to have if you're hosting. It's a bad thing if you're trying to get in. So take that for what it is. Well, for those who may not know, my name is Michael Shumsky, and I'm truly honored to be your Director of State Construction Office. Today, it is also my pleasure to introduce my new boss, Secretary Gabe Esposara. Mr. Esposara joined the Department of Administration in January with 25 plus years of experience in both the public and private sectors. Most recently, he served as the U.S. Small Business Administration's Associate Administrator for International Trade, where he advocated for American small businesses around the world. He also helped to launch an innovative GovTech startup that transformed the way digital services communicate with 911. He also spent 13 years in various leadership roles at American Express, including Vice President of Global Business Development for commercial payments. Throughout his career, Gabe has served on various boards and commissions, such as the Los Angeles Civil Service Commission, a child advocacy center in Charlotte, and most recently, Central Piedmont Community College. His breadth of work and volunteer experience has proven invaluable as he's begun leading the department that oversees several advocacy groups and serves as the business manager for North Carolina's state government. Incidentally, Secretary Esposara also has the distinction of being the first Latino cabinet member in North Carolina's history. At this time, please join me in welcoming Secretary Gabe Esposara. Yes, sir.
All righty. Thank you, Michael. And it's good to see everybody this morning. I know we're just kicking off here, so as people are walking in, feel free to fill in up here in the front. Let me say good morning and welcome to the 44th Annual Construction Conference. It is an honor to join you as the new Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Administration, proudly serving as one of the 13 cabinet members under the leadership of Governor Josh Stein. From what I hear and have come to see, not only by your comments on registration, but that this is one of the biggest events hosted at the McKimmon Center every year. So I am super excited to be with you all this morning. I do want to thank our amazing State Construction Office for their work in organizing this event and the McKimmon Center for hosting us. So if you are with the North Carolina State Construction Office, could you please stand and be recognized for all of those people in the State Construction Office? Thank you. It is no easy feat to pull off these types of conferences, and I want to express my appreciation for all of you getting us here today. Of course, this would not be possible for all of you, not just those of us in the State Construction Office, but your schedules, your time, you're traveling from across the state to be here is much appreciated. So take this opportunity to get to know all the work that we're doing, network amongst yourselves, enjoy the food. I know there's a long and important agenda today. We have a lot of great information and resources to share with you, so please feel free to dig in, take your notes, and glean all the relevant information about what we've got going on, not only in state construction, but good information about what's going on in the industry today. So in a few minutes, you'll hear from other members of the DOA team, other members in the industry. And first, let me get to just a couple of things going on in state construction and in particular our hub office as well. So the State Construction Office currently has more than $17 billion in active projects under our purview. some of which include, importantly, recovery efforts in Western North Carolina as we recover from Hurricane Helene. I will tell you, day one on the job, after the governor said, congratulations, welcome to the team, was we got work to do in Western North Carolina. So know that this governor and this legislature are all focused on Western North Carolina recovery. So thank you for all the work that you're doing to help us in that effort. We are also having just finished an important project here closer in the Department of Health and Human Services building. Some of you were there yesterday. How many of you went to that tour yesterday? Fabulous tour. Let me thank not only Will Johnson for the tour, but Chris Roberts. Is Chris Roberts here as well? Thank you, sir, and all the members of LS3P for your good work on that building and the tour yesterday. There are nearly 8,000 projects currently included in the State Construction Office Interscope database. This is good news for our infrastructure as well as our economy because it provides jobs in this state. I appreciate as well the support of the General Assembly, for they have authorized $2.6 billion in the past 2 years for state construction. Our friend Dean Arp here, Representative Dean Arp, thank you, sir. Really appreciate you being here today as well. Of course, I can't let the moment pass to say, I hope that funding stream continues, sir, for our future projects as well. Adding to that good news, I am pleased to share that the hub participation, historically underutilized businesses, has continued to thrive the past few years, where our state cabinet agencies for construction projects this fiscal year has exceeded the 10% goal. We are roughly at 19% this year. So I want to recognize our friends from the Hub office as well. If you are from the state Hub office as well, could you please stand and be recognized? Hub participation among state cabinet agencies for design projects is also more than our 10% goal this year. So we continue to do good work there. So we have a great agenda for you today and some timely breakout sessions lined up. Of course, one of the things that I'm getting used to as a new cabinet secretary is you can't be in all places at all times. So as much as I would like to remain here with you today, we have another conference going on for our American Indian community in Greensboro. So I'm going to hustle and head over there shortly. But I'm glad I can be here with you today. I will tell you, only a month and a half onto the job, I have not yet got to the point where I can tell you my exact vision for where I see state construction going. But I will tell you, I am learning quickly, having not only toured the DHHS facility yesterday, but digging in with the team. I hope to be back here next year with a more specific vision for where we go going forward. So let me simply wish you an excellent conference. Thank you again, Director Shumsky, and I look forward to not only mingling with you here for a bit, but seeing you again over the course of the year. Thank you for all your work. Let me simply say this. State construction, as I called out earlier, is an important group of people who are building these important projects for the state. But it is not just us building these projects. From design to construction, it is all of you as well. And so let me say thank you for being a partner with us. Thank you for helping promote the quality design and construction of our buildings as we grow. And thank you for helping promote growth and jobs in this economy. Have a great conference. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is going to be Catherine Lynn. She is the chair of the State Building Commission. Catherine is the Vice President for Finance and Capital Planning for the University of North Carolina System, which includes the 16 public universities in North Carolina, the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics, and affiliated entities. She's responsible for the development of the UNC system, capital budget development and execution, capital planning and construction, real property management, space management, and capital debt management. She is also a member of the Governor's Advisory Council on historically underutilized businesses. Prior to joining the UNC System office, Catherine was appointed in 2007 as the first woman director of the State of Alabama Building Commission. In 2016, she was later appointed as the first assistant finance director for real property management. Prior to joining the state of Alabama, she worked for over 8 years with the Department of Defense in the 42nd Civil Engineering Squadron at Maxwell Air Force Base as a project architect. She received her Bachelor of Architecture and Master's of Community Planning from Auburn University, is NCARB certified and a registered architect in Alabama and North Carolina. Please help me in joining Catherine Lynn.
Good morning, everybody. And on behalf of the State Building Commission, welcome to the 44th Annual State Construction Conference. I'll tell you, it's quite different from the first time I walked into this room 6 years ago, where I knew maybe a handful of people. It's great to come in and be able to recognize more faces and to feel like I'm part of this North Carolina state community. The State Construction Conference is a great opportunity for this associate to get together with those who are in the construction industry. As Michael noted, we have another record-breaking attendance, and it is no wonder. The State Construction Conference for one day creates this unique community of architects, engineers, contractors, owners' representatives, project managers, those that are in the business of making buildings. One day a year, this community gathers to connect with old friends, college classmates, former coworkers, esteemed coworkers, to share what's going on in our work, to share what's going on in our lives, what's going on in the state, to celebrate our accomplishments, and sometimes just to commiserate. It's great therapy. And this day when we gather in this community, the energy that all of you create is both electric and palpable. Thank you for all of you that make up this community and what you're doing for design and construction in the state of North Carolina. You're making this happen. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that March is celebrating women in construction, and I'm very pleased to be able to look out across the room and to see those women who are in construction and special members of my tribe. I have the honor of serving as the chair of the State Building Commission this year. The State Building Commission was established to direct and guide the state capital's facilities development and management program. The commission selects designers, consultants, construction managers at risk, and design build teams for each state capital improvement project, ensuring that those are selected have the qualifications and experience necessary for the job. The State Building Commission includes 9 members that are appointed by the governor, by the House, and the Senate. And the commission by statute includes a licensed architect, a registered engineer, a licensed building contractor, a licensed mechanical contractor, a licensed electrical contractor, 2 public members, a university system employee, and a representative of local government. So you can see that we have quite a breadth of experience on that commission that is responsible for looking at those selections for those state projects. I want to take this opportunity to recognize my fellow members on the State Building Commission. Baker Glasgow, Vice Chair of Clancy and Thays Construction, Bill Aceto from Boone, North Carolina, Danae Alexander from Greenville, North Carolina, Neville Hall from Eden, North Carolina, Jack Hargett from Hargett Electric, Roger Woods from Salis O'Brien, Kristen Hess from H Architecture, and Rob McClintock, a mechanical contractor. If my members are here, would you please stand up and be recognized? It is certainly an honor to serve with such experienced and knowledgeable people. We meet almost every month, and during those meetings, we receive the emergency declaration letters from different state agencies. We review and approve the final selection of designers, construction managers at risk, and design build teams for state capital projects. And we hear updates from what's going on in the State Construction Office, and there is a lot going on. Because of the very generous state appropriations since 2021, it's been another busy year. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Representative Arp and his vision for changing us to this pay-as-you-go project program. It's been tough getting that started because people don't always understand how long it takes to authorize a project, to get the funding in place, to get started with the planning, to do the advanced planning, to hire the team that's going to design the project and all of the consultants that are there to make sure that once you start to put that shovel in the ground, that project is going to go well. If anybody understands that, I hope that all of you who are here in this room, who have been on those projects from start to finish, understand how long it takes to birth the building. So thank you again for that vision. We're in the middle of that. We're not quite through. Some of them are, pregnant, but not quite ready to deliver. And I hope that, we can get them through and get them built. It takes time to build a building, and when you construct it, it is brick by brick. So thank you again for what you're doing and your vision. And I hope that others will recognize how transformational this is going to be for the state of North Carolina. So because of that, the State Building Commission has been very busy. We've approved designer selections for 47 projects in 1 year, 47 projects with a total budget of approximately $552 million. That is $552 million worth of projects that are just now getting the designers on board to get started. We've selected 4 construction managers at risk for approximately $122 million, so they're a little bit farther in the project. And I never sit through a State Building Commission meeting without recognizing that what we do would not be possible without the excellent staff of the State Construction Office and all that they do to facilitate this process. Michael Shumsky and the rest of the State Construction Office have been working furiously to provide a great conference. Every time I talk to Michael or get an email, I get a countdown, so it's here. Thank you for everything you've done. We have a lot of great speakers, including the ever-popular Ken Simonton, and informative breakout sessions this afternoon that I know we're all looking forward to. I'm very excited and honored to be a part of the State Building Commission. Truly, it's been a great honor, and the people I serve with and being a part of what's going on in the state of North Carolina has just been very overwhelming. And I look forward to spending the day with this special community. I look forward to spending the day with you, and I hope that you will enjoy spending the day with our people. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have our friends from the Office of State Budget and Management come up. We have with us Mr. Brian Farmer. He's a budget analyst, and his colleague, Nitin Krishnan, who's the principal economist for OSBM.
Good morning. So my name is Brian Farmer. With me today is Nitin Krishnan. We're from the Office of State Budget and Management. Today, what we have for you is Nitin's going to go through the revenue forecast and some potential impacts on funding availability for capital, and then I'll go through some capital updates. So, Nitin, do you want to go?
All right, cool. Good morning, everybody. All right, so I'll get going to kind of an overview of the economy so far this year from last year. So the positives are there has still been a strong job market. Although U.S. unemployment rate has gone up from 3.7% to 4%, with North Carolina seeing a similar but lower rise. And the second point is roughly 1.1 job openings per unemployed worker. This is a trend of a loosening job market. So previously we had a tighter job market, which means that for a given vacancy, there were fewer workers. Now it's closer to 1, which means that employers and employees have an easier time finding a match, so unemployed, so companies can hire easier. And then finally, North Carolina worker wages up 4.7% in December year over year, which is a fairly strong growth compared to the rest of the nation. But as we know, inflation has been high. That's been the talk for a while now, and we did see some easing closer to that 2% target. But for the past 4 months, we have seen inflation rise back up. And as we know, given uncertainty in policies, et cetera, there is certainly some issues on how we think inflation will change in the upcoming year. Okay, and just another point. So piggybacking off the last slide, just North Carolina economy this year And since essentially COVID, so you can see these numbers that we have up here are from 2019 to present. So you can see job growth has been about double the US, wage and salary about 7 percentage points higher, and real GDP about 4 percentage points higher as well. So in terms of comparing North Carolina to the rest of the US, again, this is since around the beginning of the pandemic, right before the beginning of the pandemic, North Carolina has been doing quite well compared to both the US and neighboring states. So that seems to be a positive. And so we use all of that information and we use forecasts about the economy to then create our general fund forecast. This is what the governor and the legislatures use to determine expenditures, appropriations. And so for this fiscal year ending June 2025, so 2024 to 2025, we are projected to exceed certified revenues that we created 2 years ago by about $500 million. And this again is because we expected a slowing of the economy in 2024 that didn't quite happen or was a bit more delayed than we expected it to be. So so there's going to be a 1.6% increase in what we expected to what we expect to see now at the end of this fiscal year. But the important thing is, what about this upcoming biennium? So from 2025 to 2027. So you can see here from from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, the growth in revenues is 0.5%, and following that, it's negative 2.4%. So we rarely see decreasing revenues, but this is because of all of the tax cuts that are coming into place. So the main one is the personal income tax rate has been now lowered to 3.99 steadily over the past decade. And in the upcoming biennium, we expect to see one trigger hit. So if you're not familiar with the triggers are written such that if revenues exceed a certain amount that's in the legislation, personal income tax rate goes down by 0.5 percentage points. So as a result, we're seeing decreasing revenues. So this obviously could be an issue, and it's even more of an issue, and I'll get to that in the next couple slides. So looking forward, what are the key forecast drivers? As we mentioned, that tax reductions and expected tax reductions are going to play a huge role in how we forecast revenues coming up. And even though we have resilient economic growth in 2025, there is inflation uncertainty in 2026, and maybe even growth uncertainty moving forward. We do expect to see growth through the end of 2025 and probably the end of the 2026 fiscal year. But after that, given uncertainty due to federal policy, this could affect long-term growth as well as short-term inflation and long-term inflation. So, okay. Now, if there's anything that's, I think, important for North Carolina, it would be these next two slides. So as you can see, every time every time general fund revenue is above that trigger, PIT rate goes down 0.5 percentage points. Now, for this upcoming fiscal year, 2025-2026, we are projecting that it'll be above the trigger by about $450 million. So we are fairly confident the first trigger will hit. So the consensus between FRD and OSBM does have that trigger hitting. And as a result, you can see that PIT rate from 2026 to 2032 is 3.49, that green bar in the bottom there. All right, and this, in addition with the CIT rate slowly going to zero by 2030, you can see that compared to keeping the trigger, compared to keeping the rates constant, this is the relative loss. So if we had keeping the rate constant by let's say fiscal year 2030-31, that's a $7 billion decrease than what we would have gotten, and that's about a 16% decrease. So 16% less in general fund revenues than if we had kept the rates constant. All right. So how does this affect spending, right? That's the important part. So the revenue adequacy is essentially a projection of expenditures assuming an increase year over year based on expected population growth and consumer price index. So that's kind of like the bare minimum expenditure growth if you want to keep all of your same spending, same programs in place. So you can see that first revenue trigger does hit and causes a dip in the baseline revenue growth. You can see from 2026, 2027, the orange line, which is the expected revenues, is going down. But if you see that little red dot over there, that is the second trigger. That's the second trigger, and that is 33 million above our projected revenues, which is a 1.1% increase. So if we collect 0.1% more than what we expect for fiscal year 2027, which is well within the margin of error, then the second trigger will hit and the PIT rate will go down from 3.49 to 2.99. And you can kind of double some of the values you saw in the previous slide. So in terms of revenue adequacy, again, if assuming that the point is to keep the same expenditures over time controlling for growth, you can see that we start seeing shortfalls in fiscal year 2027, and they start growing for a couple more years, and then it kind of flattens out. But every time we hit a trigger, and right now we are expecting to hit the second trigger in 2033, that would cause even more shortfalls. So that's the state of the revenue forecast. Now I'll hand it off to Brian to talk about everything else.
Thank you. So I'll go through some capital updates, but first I wanted to just go over some quick background. So on the slide, just showing a brief overview of the budget process. So the governor's budget typically is released in March. Then from there, it'll go to the General Assembly process. If there is a budget passed in June or before, then we'd be certifying that new budget in July. Sometimes it bleeds into August. What that means for capital projects, if there are new capital projects in the budget, those could then be set up starting in July. If there's additional funding for existing capital projects, that could also be set up in July. Additionally, we are expecting R&R funds, repair and renovation funds, both to UNC and to OSBM for agency use. The Board of Governors handles the UNC process for that, but for agencies, they can come to OSBM for the repair and renovation process. Usually in the fall is when we're awarding those. So just some background, most state-funded projects come through the State Capital and Infrastructure Fund, which I'll shorthand for SCIF. So revenue is put into the SCIF, and then from there, projects and other expenditures are appropriated out. And as been mentioned before, this allows for a pay-as-you-go system to cash flow projects. So instead of, for example, giving 100 million to a project in that first year that it might not need yet, it can be cash flowed over multiple years. So this slide is one of the updates I wanted to go over. As I said on the previous slide, SCIF has revenue put in and then projects are expended or appropriated out. This graph is showing the revenues and expenditures that have already been assigned in previous budgets. So you'll see that R&R block is the intended allocation schedule from a previous budget. That blue block is made up of projects that have been assigned and cash flowed out in the out years from previous budgets. And then the purple line is the revenue in either from previous budgets or set in statute of what will be put in the out years. So despite the appearance here, there is enough SCIF to cover an expected ARPA savings to cover what's already been budgeted or is cash flowed out. However, the main point we wanted to cover in this slide is that without an additional revenue infusion, we wouldn't expect additional new projects to be coming from the SCIF in the budget cycle this year. So flexibility fund, flex fund, some of you already may know about this, but Session Law 2021-180 established this fund for projects that were named in a budget bill and might be coming in over budget due to various factors, maybe inflation. So universities or agencies that have those named projects in budget bills and are having this issue can apply for an additional 10%. Important note here is that it can't be used to increase scope. We're just trying to get the project done as it was originally intended. So they can apply for that 10%. And we have job aids in the forms on our website, on OSBM's website. But there is also criteria that need to be met to demonstrate that attempts were made to get that project in with the original authorized budget. Mainly wanted to highlight that because there are still funds available. So if you're an agency, if you're a university and you have a project that you feel might need this, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you through that. Finally, another issue that's been coming up a little more often are cash flow concerns. And specifically what I'm talking about is when there's an authorized budget that cash flows over multiple years, but doesn't match the actual needs of the project. The Board of Governors and System Office can help universities with this, but agencies can work with OSBM. And the example I have on the screen is actually one where Project A doesn't have enough funds budgeted in fiscal year 26 to cover the expected need. So they would find a Project B where it had additional funds that it didn't need yet, that we could essentially swap those out. So Project B's FY26 funds could be moved over to Project A, and then Project A's FY28 funds could be moved over to Project B when Project B will need them. So the same total budgets would still be kept for both projects. We're just swapping out the cash flow years on that. A couple important notes here. One, the project must already be started. So if you see in Project B, it's not set to start until FY26, so we couldn't move that up with like FY25 funds from Project A. And additionally, we're only able to help out if we can actually find another project that can swap out those funds. So that's all I had. Here's our contact information. If you have any questions or if you want to reach out about any of these issues I've covered, please feel free to email or flag me down. Thank you.
Well, Rob comes over here and helps me out technically. I just want to say, we talked about, I'm glad the secretary recognized the staff at State Construction Office. I tell them often that they are good ambassadors for our program. We have 65 members of that staff, which are engineers, architects, building code officials, and administrative staff. One of the things I want to talk about, starting in what's going on in State Construction Office, is we had a pre-conference tour last night. There was about over 100 people that came. I want to sincerely thank the planning committee, which comprises people from Barnhill, Balfour Beatty, LS3P, Newcomb and Boyd, and DOA. This project, I think it's safe to say, has been the tip of the arrow for the SCIF program. It's been something that's been in the works for quite some time. I also want to give special thanks to Marty Moser and Tony Stoneking. We had this idea. We met with them over at the Farmers Market restaurant. We now know where all the local contractors eat in the morning, about 6:30. So that was kind of surprising to see. That was pretty full. Anyway, our tour started. We have 5 stations, broke the team up into about 20 people. We met in the back Bay Area where Chris Roberts gave a little overview of the project. What you're seeing in this picture here is one of the 2, I think 1250 kW emergency generators that serves a 3,000 amp switchboard. We were gathering and milling around. I was talking to Will Johnson, and Will's been with us for many years. And you always have that one thing, right? That one project, that one person. And I was telling Will, mine was when we got notice from the FAA that we had to cut 9 feet off the building because of RDU. So I don't know who was more concerned, LS3P or me. But we ultimately appealed that, and it's 11-story structure with an adjacent 9-floor parking deck, just over 1,000 parking spaces with PV arrays. But anyway, the things you don't think of. This is a view from the 11th floor. Again, there's a penthouse on the 12th floor, if you will. But this is a view looking at south, if you will, along Blue Ridge Road. To the right is the Art Museum. What you see in the lower right-hand corner is the NCDOA Motor Fleet Management Buildings. This is a view looking towards downtown Raleigh, looking east. You can kind of see the buildings along the skyline. It's a phenomenal view. You can actually see this from our offices. When you get off of Wade Avenue, it basically dominates the skyline. These were some of the drone photos we took yesterday. These are some photos of the folks that came and did the tour. This is another drone photo. You'll see basically the landscaping going in. The area in the front is kind of where the drop-off area will be. You'll see the 9-level parking deck. What you'll see on the back side and on the south side is some metal cladding. As you may know, this is near the Joint Force Headquarters building, and this is basically the cladding was put up to discourage or not have a direct line of sight to that emergency facility. So that was a little unique. So state construction. Where are we? We're located down at Halifax Mall. It's the pink building, the new education building on the 4th floor, 301 North Wilmington Street. I talked a little bit about our team. You know, we have 65 staff, engineers, architects, building code officials, and administrative. We have the certified inspectors, a level 3 in the 5 main trades: building, fire, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And as always, as design professionals and in the industry, we hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public. As Secretary mentioned, we have about $17 billion worth of existing projects. Our 3 primary customers, as you may know, are the state agencies, the universities, and the community college system. And there's a little bit of a breakdown how those close to 8,000 projects break out. One of the things I want to mention is Hurricane Helene. And after that happened, we had 3 inspectors. We had 1 inspector who lived up there, David Souther. And we had 2 other inspectors that went up there to help with the disaster assistance response teams. This is about 2 weeks afterward. This was one of the photos they took. This is the town of Marshall in Madison County. This is some other photos. You can see a freight container or a container box car, if you will, that was been moved. One of the things I want to talk about is Jeff Hinkle. He served on that DART team. He was up there from October 10th to the 13th. And we had David Souther up there, and although he didn't have any power or anything, he was helping with DOT with their electrical inspections when they were trying to bring up remote stations for gas, getting gas. We had Jeff evaluate 780 structures in 4 days, 13 hours each day. And you say, well, how can that be possible? Well, when you show up on site and there's nothing but a set of stairs, it's pretty easy to check off that the building's gone. So unfortunately, that was probably more often seen than not. We had Michael Cottle up there, our inspector. He helped with inspecting residential and commercial buildings in Madison and Yancey counties. And again, David Souther had helped out with DOT with electrical inspections to carry on the continuity. State Construction Office has 4 sections. We have the Construction Management Facility Condition Assessment Program section, our Design Review section, our Downtown Government Complex Consultant Services section, and our Capital Project Management Unit. In our Construction Management Group for 2024, there was about 249 award letters, which reflected about $1.1 billion in construction contracts. We had accepted 116 projects, which had a total value of about $470 million. I'm not going to talk about too much about FCAP because Mr. Baden is going to talk about that as part of his discussion, but basically we have a 5-year cycle for all state buildings that are over 3,000 feet in gross square feet. It relies very heavily on the owner's representatives for input on the issues. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this to assist the owners to identify future repair and renovation funding requests. So we're not there. You as the operators, the facility maintenance individuals, you know what you need better than we'll ever know. So it's very important that when these FCAP team members come up there, you have the appropriate people to discuss what your needs are. One thing I want to talk about is our design review section. In 2024, we had 1,907 plans received. We had 1,919 plans go out, and we had 248 design exceptions. A design exception being something that doesn't require any structural very minor in nature. So they typically send a request in to the state construction office, which is reviewed and given the authority to move forward. With full SCO oversight projects, the most, for the most part, the most time that it spends in the state construction office is 120 days. So don't drink the Kool-Aid if at the end of the project you blame the state construction office, because the time you lose on the front end is not necessarily the time you're going to gain on the back end, right? So you as owners, you as design professionals, construction managers at risk, you need to hold everyone's feet to the fire in the very beginning. Because although you may not recognize it in the beginning, you'll certainly recognize it with the schedule at the end. But sometimes we do advanced planning, that's a 15 days, or 30, 30, 60 with DD, SD, and CDs. And then our final approval is 15 days. We do some limited project oversights, which is basically code enforcement review. And typically we issue a letter that we're good to go to bid within 6 months. If you have to come back, if for whatever reason it didn't go out to bid, you have another 15, there'd be another reevaluation for 15 days, basically for building code. Consultant services section, they're pretty much responsible for the downtown government complex. What you see here is our chiller plant number 2, adjacent to Salisbury Street. We're also going to have some piping to the new North Carolina Education Campus. But what you see here is the work in progress. North Carolina Education Campus, that is being managed by the Legislative Services Commission. It is going to basically house DPI, the UNC System Office, community colleges, and one other, which I'll get in the next slide. But one of the things that had to happen was our consultant services section was involved with moving our staff, NCDOA staff, the governor's office staff, out of the Albemarle building, or out of the admin building to the Albemarle building. The old former administration building was 202,000 square feet. Again, it required multiple moves to get people out, and we did that in December of 2024. The admin building was soon thereafter demolished. What you see here is in progress. You have a bird's eye view. The middle picture, you'll see the Albemarle building basically is in the shadow of the former site. Again, this is a bird's eye view over it. Our office was involved as the authority having jurisdiction for the blasting permit. That was pretty interesting. We had 12 adjacent buildings. We had the high-rise tower, I believe, 21 feet. For the State Employees Credit Union, we had the museum, we had the General Assembly building, the Legislative Office building, and the Albemarle building, and we had one private hotel. So you can imagine all the coordination and communication that went on with that. Like most blasting activities, we had seismic monitoring, vibration monitoring, which we did. We also the team looked at conditions pre versus post blasting. Some of those buildings, especially in Cashwell Square, are brick. They're very old and they have plaster walls. So not everybody encounters that. So our capital projects management section, I would say that basically our number one accomplishment there is keeping the DHHS headquarters project on time and within budget. Again, it's a 34-acre site, 460,000 square feet. I talked about the 9-story parking deck, just over 1,000 spaces, and we have a central utility plant. And the central utility plant was built to facilitate future build out in a phase 2 for another similar tower and another expansion of that deck. The occupancy is expected in September 1st of this year. And I'm pleased to say that we have a 20.1, close to 21% hub participation. One of the things I mentioned last year, but I think it's real important to remember, is there are 3 precepts, if you will, to capital project management. Number 1 is the state of North Carolina is adversity to risk and risk management, right? These are taxpayer monies. These are public funds. We as taxpayers are held to a higher standard with fiduciary expenditure of those funds. So again, we're adverse to risk. Number 2 is fair access and business opportunities on state-funded projects, right? Public advertisements for designers, contractors, and subcontractors, proactive solicitation for historically underutilized businesses, pre-qualification of first-tier subcontractors, and public bidding for construction. And the final precept, if you will, is oversight, right? You have the General Assembly, you have the Office of State Budget and Management, the State Building Commission, and the State Construction Office. So in a given capital improvement project, it's just not one entity, it's multiple entities working together. One of the things I want to talk about, we're very fortunate that we now have a programmer, if you will, doing our Interscope system. Azim Sabori came to us after retiring from IBM for 28 plus years. So some of the best practices that we're seeing that I just want to mention is basically to notify us, SCO, Azim Sabori, when users are no longer with your organization. I know with the community colleges, there's 58 of them, and with 17 affiliated institutions with the UNC system, people are coming and going all the time. I know it's difficult, but again, it helps us keep the system clean and keep from clogging the system up with emails. Again, we highly recommend not sharing login accounts. We've had instances where we have one individual sharing their account, they leave and it's deactivated, then the other people that were sharing the account. Plus, as you've heard from IT, it's a security risk. Always include the SEO ID number, right? The ID number is like a fingerprint. It's basically references a single project. With that ID number, we can identify what the project is. And again, extra Interscope permission requests require supervisor's notification. We just don't want anyone just wanting to have access to Interscope. So we either want you to have an email of your supervisor or your supervisor sending us an email saying that, yes, this individual works for us, and we would like him to have the following permissions on our capital improvement projects. And then finally, when reporting a problem, a PR, please submit a PR and versus sending an Interscope email. Those Interscope emails get going pretty quick and get backed up. If you send a PR report, there's a documentation of when it came in. There's a documentation of what the issue was and it being resolved. One thing I want to talk about is the Legislative Building Code Councils. You may have heard something about this. But bottom line, last year, House Bill 488 created the residential code effectively. Senate Bill 166 effectively dissolved the current Building Code Council and created what is effectively a commercial Building Code Council. It's not called that, but effectively that's what it is. Each council has 13 members. As I understand it, there's 6 appointed by the General Assembly, 3 each by the North Carolina House and the North Carolina Senate, and the governor appoints 7, and which requires NC Senate confirmation. The new law sets that a quorum is at 9 people. My understanding is that between the 2 councils, I think there's only 6 that's been selected to date. So stay tuned on that. Obviously, you can't have any council meetings till you have a quorum, that being 9. I want to talk a little bit about issues we keep seeing in the State Construction Office are manufactured in modular buildings. This is something that can be purchased through a PNC contract. I'll make one statement. PNC contract is extremely good for commodities. It's extremely bad for implementing construction projects because they're not really putting the services in that you really need as an owner, that you as a contractor need. Manufactured buildings are basically built to federal HUD standards. They're basically used for residential use only. Modular buildings, on the other hand, the plans for those modular buildings are submitted to the Office of State Fire Marshal for review and compliance with the North Carolina Building Code. We have off-site construction inspections by third-party inspectors. You typically have a data plate issued at the point of manufacture, and the AHJ permits for final on-site assembly, which is required. PNC can issue specifications. They can solicit bids, award purchases for the lease for both manufactured or modular buildings. However, they may have no provisions in there for site utilities and layouts, which are designed by owning agencies, whether they have in-house or consultant staff. The other thing that your PNC contract, in this case, may not cover is site evaluations, floodplain management, ADA, and grading issues. The topography of a given site may vary. Site utilities, a big one. You basically need a design professional plan submitted to AHJ for water, sewer, electrical connections. This is delayed projects where they've ordered buildings and there's been no communication with the municipal AHJ. Foundations, again, typically design and construction is not part of a lease. You have exterior steps and ramps as it relates to ADA compliance. Then you have sprinklers and fire alarms, which obviously are dependent upon what's the occupancy of the building. Additional freeze protection for below floor piping may be required. It very rarely gets below freezing in North Carolina, but as you know, earlier this year, it did for a period of a week. So it's important to have basically freeze protection if you have a water system, because if it's activated, you're not going to get the water through the system and on the structure. Inspections, again, designers are to visit the job site and inspect per our standard form and agreement with owners and designers. Again, that may or may not be covered in a PNC contract. The other thing I'm seeing that I'll make mention of is the PNC contract for floor replacement or painting. Floor replacement and painting are considered construction. One of the big things is when you do a floor is you need to be testing for asbestos containing material, ACM. That is not necessarily covered in the statewide term contract for flooring replacement. There's a place there for it, but I see this a lot in the universities and the community college systems. You need to know what you're dealing with. Are you dealing with lead paint? Are you dealing with ACM? If you're dealing with ACM, you have to have an industrial hygienist and you have to have designer plans. So all I'm saying is buyer beware. PNC contract, in my opinion, is good for commodities, good for building, purchase of buildings, construction commodities. It's really bad for basically spelling out what may be needed to implement those buildings on a given site. So again, we're seeing a lot of that, and it's creating a lot of heartburn, if you will, for contractors and certainly for the owners. As you may know, the new NC Building Code is going to be implemented on July 1st of this year. There'll be a memorandum coming out from this office, but basically what we're saying is if you receive approval for design development prior to July 1, we're going to go through SD and CD for Building Code 2018. Otherwise, your DD plans are going to be required to comply with a new 2024 code. And again, you may have a situation where projects are placed on hold or remain inactive for 1 year after receiving the DD approval, but they must be resubmitted under the new code if they haven't gone to construction. But anyway, like I say, I appreciate everyone coming here today. For the SEO staff, we're going to meet down at the courtyard at 10 o'clock sharp. I will say our special guest speaker will be here at 10:30. I would ask everyone to please be in the room and seated promptly at 10:30. It'd be greatly appreciated. And again, I hope everyone enjoys the reunion and look forward to seeing everyone today and look forward to next year. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to have Alicia Lyons and John Gunther come up to give a little hub overview.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I am Alicia Lyon, and I serve as the director for the Hub office. And we're glad to be here today. As you heard some of the stats from our secretary about Hub, we're glad to say that we are the Hub office and we're still open for business. We continue to support our Hub vendors, our small businesses as well. We're honored to be here today and to thank individuals that have supported and been champions of our office and small businesses that we serve. We're excited to share the Office for Historical and Utilized Businesses continues to partner with Director Shumsky and his dedicated staff as we continue to increase our utilization of Hub firms in construction. State construction and Hub professionals are moving forward and elated to share some Hub updates and accomplishments today. I'm glad to say that we also have some of our staff here. I would like for them to stand and be recognized for the beautiful work that we do. I also want to ask for our council members that are here to please stand and be recognized, and also individuals that do Hub work. We're glad to say that we are excited to have the support that we have, and thank you all for what you do every day. Couldn't do it without you. Some of our staff are still in the office during our Hub operations, as you all know, that they have to continue. So we have limited time on the agenda, but I want to turn the remainder of our time over to John Gunther, one of our Hub leaders and amazing champions, to provide the nuts and bolts of Hub from a high-level perspective. But also, I want to remind everybody to please remember to attend our breakout sessions and our Hub event that will be taking place tonight at 5 p.m. We would love to see you all. The staff will be there that you can meet us and ask questions as well. We appreciate those of you all that are including Hub vendors in the work that you do every day. If you ever have any questions or business needs or to find a Hub vendor, please contact our office. From here, I'll let John take the mic. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Gunther. I am the Data and Compliance Manager in the Hub office, also serving as the Interim Deputy Director. And a lot of you already know what the Hub office is, but we wanted to go over that very quickly. The Hub office, we promote diversity and inclusion in state procurement and contracting. Our main roles include certification of Hub vendors, historically underutilized businesses, as well as the North Carolina Small Business Enterprise, which is a slightly different certification. We also do advocacy and business development services. We do compliance and reporting. So all those numbers that go into Interscope, they flow to us and we put them together when it's related to Hub. And we also manage the Minority Business Development Agency's Business Center out of RTP. And so what is a hub? It's defined in state statute 143-128.4, and it's 51% ownership and management and daily control of the business by individuals who fall into the categories that we have listed there. That's Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled, and disadvantaged. We also have a new certification category in there. We call it ESOP. That's Employee Stock Ownership Plan, and it's based on 51% minority ownership. That's a new category. We're still working out the details on certifications for that. So that will probably be something that we'll be looking at from a systems standpoint, and probably some of those affidavits that we'll have to take a look at as well. Certifications are managed by the Hub office. They last for 4 years, and there is the ability to recertify. There's no fee to get certified. So why we look for Hub vendors? It's vital that all North Carolinians have the opportunity to contribute economically by participating in business opportunities existing in government. That's not a quote from me. That's a quote from the Executive Order 25. That's the latest one related to Hub participation, and set the goal of 10% for goods and services as well. We also have several general statutes related to Hub participation. They cover formal and informal construction, contracting, and reporting. And it covers any new construction, repair, renovation, projects that have a total of $30,000 or more for that project. So anything $30,000 or more, you need to be paying attention to reaching out to Hub vendors to encourage them to participate, and to report on those projects. The statute 143-128.2 in particular describes good faith efforts and by owners as well as bidders. So it's not all on just the bidders. There are some good faith efforts that the owners have to do as well. And the goal of 10% is established in 143-128.2. And then finally, the statewide uniform certification statute is the one that defines Hub and says that there will be a certification, and it says only certified firms count towards that Hub participation. So looking at our certifications over time, they've gone up quite a bit since 2017. They've more than doubled since then. We're at right about 7,000 firms that are certified as Hubs right now. And they're all over the state. There are some areas where they're more concentrated than others. Probably not surprising that our urban areas have more Hub vendors there than some of our more rural communities. And where one of our initiatives right now is to reach out to those rural communities and find vendors that would be eligible for certification and encourage them to get certified. And this is a point in my slot that I was going to ask for some audience participation, not going to take a lot of time. But just we've got a listing here of the different types of services that are provided by hub vendors. And if there's anybody in the room as I go through this that falls into one of those categories, feel free to stand up and let yourself be seen so folks can say, you know what, I need a GC that can do that job. You know, hub, non-hub, I need a GC, but hey, I know there's a GC right there. So we have over 50 architects that are certified as hub vendors, over 50 engineering companies that are certified as hub vendors. General contractors, we've got over 500, and that includes building, residential, highway, and public utilities. Electrical contractors, we've got over 140. License levels include limited, intermediate, and unlimited. Plumbing contractors, we've got over 50 with different licensing capabilities there. Mechanical contractors, over 40 of those, and we've got over 1,000 trade subcontractors as well. So there are hubs that do a lot of what we need. So hopefully you can reach out to them and include them in your opportunities. Hub usage, looking at this has this year so far for design and construction, as well as last year. So looking at last year for design for fiscal year 23-24, we had $19 million total in hub spending. That was quite an increase from previous years, and our total percentage was 8.84% on that. Design so far for this fiscal year, we're at about $2.7 million in design spend, with 4.35%. So the year is half over. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to see additional spending there. The differential between the amount of spending overall is pretty significant and this is for finalized projects, not just awarded so far. So last year we had over $220 million in design contracts finalized, and this year so far we've got 63, and it's a little bit of a difference halfway through the year. One thing with design is we're still working on getting consultant dollars in there. So this is mostly just the prime designer on these contracts. So it doesn't necessarily include yet any consultants that are included in those projects. On the construction side, we had $312 million in total hub spending, that's about 25%. And I've got a chart for what that looks like over time, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And then so far this year, we're at $54 million in total hub spend for 15% of our goal. So that does not mean that every single project is achieving 10%. A lot of projects are. And some agencies are achieving over 10%. Not every single agency, university, community college does that. This is about opportunity. People have to bid, people have to win, people have to be able to do the work. The good faith efforts do help with this, with making sure that they have that opportunity. When we look at our construction percentages over time, we started off, less than 10%, probably a little bit more than 5%. And last year we were at 25.68%. And that was the fourth highest hub percentage that has been achieved by the state in a given fiscal year. And you can see that trend seems to be going up over time. For the spend itself, the dollar-wise, last fiscal year was the second highest hub spend year that was reported. So that's a lot of dollars. That's a lot of participation. Design over time, this is only a 4-year chart because we only started being able to capture information about design from Interscope 4 years ago. So we're still building this. And as I mentioned, we're still working on trying to be able to include consultant data in that, in addition to the prime designers. And here's our design spend. So that dollar amount does seem to be going in an upward trend as well. So I'm going to stop here real quick. And our hub breakout session this afternoon is led by Denisha Harris, who is an excellent presenter. And she is talking about diversify to thrive, how to lead as a hub champion. So hopefully you'll be able to come out and meet with her. She's the Assistant Finance Director of Town of Cary, has a lot of experience in this area. And I think you'll learn a lot and enjoy that presentation. We do hope that you'll be able to join us from 5 to 7 for the annual Hub Networking Reception and Expo. It's a great opportunity to meet folks, mingle, talk about projects, and have a little bit of good food. There might be a little bit of good music as well. And do want to mention, related to Hurricane Helene, I did not have a specific slide on here for that, but I do want to mention that we are in partnership with a number of organizations around the state in how hubs can help out. We actually created a dashboard for solicitation opportunities on our website that is solely for disaster-related projects. So if you go into our website and submit a project, and primes can do that, and it's disaster related, it will show up on that dashboard as well as our regular solicitation opportunity dashboard. And we're also going through the opportunities that come from EVP, the electronic vendor portal system. That doesn't have a built-in way of indicating that it's a disaster project. So we're going through those projects to make sure that we indicate which ones are disaster related. So far, we've posted 100 different projects up on our site related to that. And we've been providing solicitation, or not solicitations, but lists of hub vendors that can provide different services, whether it's for debris removal or infrastructure support. So just wanted to share that as well. Okay, thank you very much.
I think John's going to be doing karaoke too, so don't miss it. Right, John? All right, back by popular demand is Joe Baden with our inspection discoveries. So Joe, why don't you come on up and tell the folks what you found?
Good morning. It's great to see everybody here at the SCO conference. This is always a great time. And look forward to spending a few minutes here with you. Thank you for the opportunity, Michael. Appreciate it. And as Director Michael Shumsky said, my name's Joe Baden. I'm one of 6 building systems engineers in the FCAP group at the State Construction Office. And I'm looking forward to putting up some slides here this morning. I think we have a total of 42 if there's time, but I think we will have time. Slides of things we see in the field in our FCAP trips. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I'd like to just take a couple minutes, so if I could talk about the FCAP program, and Michael said some things about this too. Appreciate that, sir. FCAP, as you may know, stands for the Facilities Condition Assessment Program of the State Construction Office. And the FCAP group in the State Construction Office consists of 6 building systems engineers. We're divided into 3 two-man teams. Our teams visit every state-owned building larger than 3,000 gross square feet in size. And we travel the state and see the buildings on a 5 to 7 year cycle. And all 3 teams, we visit every county in the state. I think we've driven just about every back road and main highway in the state of North Carolina. We've gone through a lot of backcountry a few times, and I'll have 1 or 2 slides that might illustrate that. Again, we inspect all state-owned buildings that are currently on the books in the Interscope database, 3,000 square feet and larger. And we enter our FCAP reports into the Interscope database. And the reports are available for review by all building owners, agency heads, to take action and follow up for future steps. Okay, so I'd like to take a few minutes of your time, take a look at some interesting things we've seen in our FCAP inspections. All of the photos you'll see are buildings that are owned by the state of North Carolina. I'll mention community colleges in a few minutes, but we look at state-owned buildings currently on the books in Interscope, 3,000 feet and larger. So, okay. And just for reference, the state owns over 11,000 total buildings of every size. Some of them are basically the size of an outhouse, actually. We only look at 3,000 gross square feet in size, as I said. There are over 5,000 buildings in that size range that are owned by the state. Okay, we've divided our photos into four kind of broad groups: the good, the bad, the ugly. We talked about this last year. Many of you were here last year, but all the slides except for one are new this year. The good, the bad, the ugly, and for want of better words, the odd, the interesting, the amusing, perhaps. I don't know. First, the good slides. Great. Couple slides here, and I could spend all morning, all day putting up slides of good facilities that we go in and we see, and they're tremendous. And that is a tribute to everybody here who's in the construction industry. But, you know, time takes a toll on everything, and certainly on buildings, even well-designed, well-built, well-conceived structures, well-maintained structures. You can still, over time, develop problems. First couple of slides showing good design, construction, and/or maintenance. Okay. On the left, that's chiller house. And the thing I like about this as a mechanical engineer is the fine print, a 4-ton hoist over that chiller. And sooner or later, you're going to be glad to have a hoist over a chiller because it will be opened up sooner or later, in my experience, for maintenance. On the right side, it's a nice mechanical room, good access to equipment, well, good color coding. We always love to be able to get to mechanical equipment for maintenance. And sooner or later, that equipment will probably have to be changed out. And it's good to have doors that enable you to get in and get out. Okay, on the left, we have, this is a prison dorm on the left. That's a plumbing chase. A long plumbing chase is very typical of prison dorms. And the good thing about this is you have almost perfect access to your plumbing elements there. You don't have to dig anything up. You can get to it. And that chase is between two dormitory segments. I was surprised to see this generator on the right. That's a Mercedes-Benz engine and a Rolls-Royce generator, and pretty nifty machine. And when you see a nice piece of equipment like this, you don't call the state cheap. I'll say that. Anybody here have a Rolls-Royce generator? I wish I did. No. Okay. Okay, so what we've all been waiting for, the bad, the ugly, the odd, and maybe just some interesting slides here. Again, all these photos are from state-owned buildings. Absolutely no photoshopping allowed. Okay, this is bad. I think you see this right off. We've got a fire-rated wall there, and somebody at some point, for whatever reason, decided to bust a hole in that wall, fire-rated wall, and let conduit wiring, whatever that is, go right through that wall with absolutely no fire stopping. And you can see some of the stenciling on the right side. It says protect all openings in this fire-rated wall. Ironically, of course, it's right next to that hole somebody busted out. So that's not so good. Here is another violation of basic fire safety construction. This is 3 pictures of the same installation. On the left, somebody cut a hole in a duct, pushed wiring, whatever that is, communication wiring, through the hole and through a fire damper. You see the fire damper visible in the center photo and the right side photo. At the top of the middle and right side photos, you see the fusible link that in a fire gets hot enough to melt that link, and the shutter comes down. The problem with that wiring going through there, that totally defeats the purpose of that fire damper. So, and of course, that's mounted in a rated wall. Okay, this is kind of interesting. I'll call it bad, but you know, when you look up, you go in a room, you know, you got a suspended ceiling, a drop ceiling. You kind of expect to see a ceiling grid and ceiling tiles. Okay, well here we've got the diffusers delivering conditioned air into the room, but they're just suspended from various parts of that structure there, and it's just kind of bad and odd. Fortunately, if you look carefully, kind of on the right side photo there, you can see the diffusers. The diffuser on the left is held in place by kind of a sturdy strap, so it doesn't fall down on people. And that was odd. Hopefully, the straps here that hold those diffusers up, hopefully they meet seismic requirements. I don't know that. Whoop. Okay. You know, we go into very old buildings here. And on the left, you wonder if that meets all of your ADA requirements for accessibility, railing, whatever. This is on the books as a state-owned building. On the right, severe deterioration of masonry. In the case of these 2 buildings, we recommended demolition of both these buildings. Okay, so you have to give credit to facilities people who keep equipment working despite all odds. On the left side, you see an air-cooled heat exchanger, part of an HVAC system. Whoa, say again. Yeah, so you got an air-cooled heat exchanger. Yeah, here we go. And the problem is, you look at that garden spray down underneath it, you buy at Lowe's, and 24/7, 365, that's pouring water from the underside on that air-cooled heat exchanger, and that you shouldn't have that. Somehow, thermally, that system's been overloaded. So to keep it running, keep it operational, they're pouring water on that thing. And that does keep it cooler, but that's not bad. I mean, that's bad. It's not good. And you don't want to see that. The photo on the right shows a steam leak. And like every leak, that steam leak is only going to become bigger and more dangerous. Okay. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is an operational generator, an old generator at a state facility. The interesting thing to me was you see the blade tips on that fan have been machined off by the shroud that used to be around those fan blades, and somehow the shroud, I think, got loose, machined down the tips of those blades, and mechanically that's not a good situation. But I asked the maintenance guy, he said, yeah, it's operational, and I gave him credit for that. I guess it doesn't overheat. Oh, we've talked about that. Okay. Okay, these two photos are of the same building, and what we're looking at, especially on the right side, up high, you can see deterioration of that roof decking, okay? And when the discoloration of that wooden roof decking up high above the fans. And usually when something's wrong with roof decking, you think, well, it's you got a problem with a leaky roof. But actually, we looked at this some more, and that's caused by the accumulation of very warm and humid air at the top of the room. It needs better ventilation to avoid that situation getting worse. Okay, our FCAP inspections take us from the roofs of buildings down to the basements. We'll have several slides here about roofs. On the left, you can see a significant gap there in that masonry against the brick wall. And of course, that allows water to pour into the building. The cap, that chimney cap on the right, is just several bricks kind of propped up on top of a chimney. I believe that's an active chimney there. And of course, that water infiltration coming down into chimneys, that will be very destructive to interior finishes. But picture any mechanical equipment that might be exhausting into that chimney, and like gas-fired hot water heater or a gas furnace. And when water gets into the firebox on that kind of equipment, you're going to have problems pretty quick. Okay, skylights obviously can be a source of leaks. Here you see considerable patching of an old roof. If you look carefully here on the left side, you see a Valiant roof strainer, but the problem is it's slowly sinking through the roof because of most likely deteriorated decking below the roof material. But that strainer there is cockeyed and sinking. On the right-hand side, you've got that roof flashing up against the wall. You can see a gap in the seal between the roof flashing and the wall. And sometimes issues, that are easy to overlook or might seem unimportant, they can have serious ramifications for the building and cause a lot of damage. Uncontrolled roof leaks can lead to a lot of trouble. Now, I think this is kind of interesting, worth talking about for a minute or two. On the left, you see multiple roof patches. Okay. Now, all kinds of stuff can cause roof damage and necessitate patching like that. But perhaps a more interesting cause of roof damage is bullets. Okay. Bullets falling from the sky. Okay, stay with me here, if you would. On the right-hand side, we have a collection of bullets, spent bullets that were gathered from rooftops at a major state facility that has a number of buildings at that facility. The maintenance folks go around periodically, and I think that collection that we see on the right basically is a 5-year collection accumulated over 5 years of bullets, different kinds of bullets that were picked up off the roofs at this institution. All kinds, if you look carefully, different bullet types, hollow point, some of these, large caliber, small caliber. And I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't say how many bullets need to pile up on top of a roof before it becomes a structural issue, okay? But I know it is good to clean bullets off your roof periodically, or it can actually start to clog up the roof drains there. So that was kind of interesting, I thought. Highly deteriorated piping shown on the right. That leak, especially visible in the right side photo, I don't know how they could have lived with that, but normally when we see plumbing that deteriorated, it's not in just one spot of the plumbing system. We're probably talking about a complete plumbing renovation. Okay, let's look at some issues in interior finishes of buildings that we see frequently. Okay, here we see broken and removed floor tiles in a large kitchen. Of course, this is a safety concern for people who work in the kitchen and have to walk around on that uneven surface. And of course, it makes it hard to clean the floor in that kitchen. This floor crack on the left photo indicates a severe differential settlement problem in the building's foundation. Very, very severe settlement issue. On the right, this is a precast parking deck showing water infiltration due to a failed sealing of the joint between those two precast double T's. Okay, some more cracks on the right photo in particular. You'll see cracks in this brick wall, and the lintel above that window is deteriorated and starting to fail. Parking lots. We report on site issues as well as building issues, okay? So parking lot pavement often needs repair. And I'll mention if an issue like underground utilities, chilled water, steam, condensate, electrical, potable water, whoops, great. If we see issues in the infrastructure that pertain to more than one building, that will be entered in Interscope as a complex deficiency. If an issue pertains to just one building, that's a facility deficiency in Interscope. Okay, we look at all building elements from the top of the roof down to the foundation. Here you see significant deterioration of the painted CMU wall, as well as the siding above it. That wooden siding's deteriorated. This is a damp, shaded environment, and of course that accelerates the rate of deterioration. In the next photo here, we'll look at that ramp you see on the left of this photo. So here's the underside of that ramp, and you can see extensive corrosion here. We'll go in crawl spaces, tunnels, roofs. We'll have an attic photo coming up. So we try to look at the entire building and do our best effort to report on the condition and what we recommend be done to address that. Maybe we don't see this real often, but here's some pretty serious termite damage at a state-owned facility. And I'm not a termite expert, but I think they need a communication path from the ground up to the wood, and we didn't see that here. But that's another form of deterioration for sure. Okay, we're going to have a few slides here about water and electricity. And they say water and electricity, they don't mix. I think that's correct. So in this photo, the photo on the right, you've got a gutter that failed and somehow allowed water basically to channel down the side of that wall above and into that meter box, okay? And now behind that meter box, if you look on the left side photo, it's a fire riser room, electrical room, high voltage. So there's a lot of electricity available in this illustration, and that water coming off that roof and somehow bypassing the gutter, that water has to be stopped before somebody gets hurt or something blows up in that electrical system there. So there are several issues here: the masonry issue, paint issue, gutter, water issue, and electrical issue. Those should probably be written up as separate deficiencies. Okay. Sometimes operational issues will create building issues. Okay, here you see a support column that's been knocked sideways by something. I won't give this away by mentioning the yellow color of that vehicle. But something happened to that column, and that is something that needs to be fixed. Okay, corrosion is a constant enemy. Again, if on the right side in particular, you see a big old hole at the bottom of that steel column, and you don't want to have too many of your columns looking like that in a shed. Okay. Now, it's not too unusual, maybe at our older universities, as an example, not picking on them, but it's not unusual to see old wooden single pane windows that are very deteriorated from sun and rain, especially with a southern exposure. They tend to be worse there. Okay. So our FCAP inspections take us on top of roofs, but attic spaces as well. So in this photo, the problem is in this attic, there's no insulation between the joists, and this attic is over an occupied conditioned space. So it needs to be insulated. Well, deterioration with age, a badly deteriorated pipe going through the wall, and the insulating jacket obviously is badly deteriorated. On the right-hand side, you've got an electric hot water heater. This is corroded on the top. It's probably galvanic action between the copper and steel, whatever the fittings. And perhaps more typically, you'll see corrosion at the bottom of a hot water heater. But probably before long, that hot water heater is going to blow, and that's going to be a mess. Okay. Here's an old square D panel. It's seen better days, that's for sure. Obviously, this needs replacement. If you look carefully, it's the third slot down on the left, slot number 5. It appears that slot is busted open and might be a danger point as far as getting in there and contacting a lug back in there. So you'll see this type of deterioration more often in damp and especially saltwater environments. Okay, here are a few situations that are bad and perhaps also odd. And again, none of these photos have been photoshopped. Okay, and they all show current state-owned buildings. Okay, they're in Interscope. On the left, nice looking electrical panel and a nice looking water cooler. And when I was looking at this, you might call this photo, the photo on the left, an electrician-friendly design. Okay, what does that mean? So if you're working on this panel, and let's say the panel's hot, it's energized, and maybe with the cover off, maybe you're pulling some circuits into the panel or changing some breakers, covers off, and the lugs are exposed. But it's a hot day, you're thirsty, so you lean over and get a nice cool drink. That's good. And you've used that, perhaps you've used, I'm painting a picture here, you've used that water cooler as a little shelf for your screwdrivers, electrician tools, pliers, whatnot. So, you know, Now, and the water cooler is grounded, I'm sure, through the plugs, so why worry? What could happen? The electrical code, beside that obvious issue, the electrical code, I'm pretty sure, has a problem with some of the equipment clearances in front of that panel. I think you're looking at the spout on that water cooler that it's well within the clearance requirement of that panel. And one other catch, I didn't see this, but that water cooler has to be dual height, okay? So now the right side, the right side photo shows some nice looking condensing units. I love condensing units, but if there are ADA folks here, you probably see an issue with putting a condensing unit directly in front of a means of egress like this. And that is not a good placement for that. It's specifically the condensing unit there in the middle. I'll say that we see issues, and going back to that firewall issue where they busted out that firewall, a lot of issues we see and write up have to do with modifications at the building, in the building, long after the construction, okay? Probably that firewall issue occurred 10, 20, 30 years, maybe after the building went up. And here, I bet that condensing unit was installed well after initial construction. But it still needs to be fixed, needs to be corrected. This is sort of interesting, an interesting mix of water and electricity. So we're walking down the hall and you see, and this is a lab building, you see that orange nozzle overhead, great, an emergency shower system, great. But you walk a few more feet there and you look back and you see that electrical panel. It's probably 240 in there. And I don't know if you want to have a shower right there at an electrical panel. And one of my colleagues pointed this out. You know, God forbid if an arc flash occurs in connection with that panel, the shower handle, it is conveniently located. So if you're still alive, if you're still alive after an arc flash, you can extinguish yourself. So maybe it's good design, but maybe not. Now this was kind of interesting, I thought. We all know the importance of lockout, tag out when working on electrical equipment, such as this good size piece of switch gear. I don't know if it's square D, maybe, but anyhow, we had a very brave electrician. So you got lockout, tag out, and maybe there's a Post-it note rule about electrical safety with your panels and switch gear. To ensure safety, you can read the brave electrician's note. Maybe everybody can read that. It says, do not turn breaker on, exclamation mark. Currently working on the line, exclamation mark. By the way, that note is not at the front of the panel, it's off to the side. You might, when you stand in front of that switch gear, you probably might well not see that note. But on the note, I will say, fortunately, the electrician left, you can see the date, that date, and his initials, and that can be helpful information for family and friends, okay? So we appreciate that. To be clear, we do not recommend at SCO the Post-it note approach. You want to go with the normal lockout, tag out, I believe. Okay. This is a little bit odd, I thought. Might be an example of value engineering. So that's a gauge. Okay, fine. Might not be able to see this too well, but the gauge is the pressure gauge is mounted upside down, okay? It works okay. It's showing about 108 PSI. I looked at it. But usually you want your instruments to be mounted right side up, right? But this does represent some good value engineering. Probably with $2 or $3 worth of fittings from Lowe's, you could mount that right side up. But we did save some money there. Somebody did. Okay. Well, okay, everybody believes in saving energy, of course. So why not think about this? And I'll draw your attention to the windows in these two pictures. It's the same building. Why not install new, modern, double pane, energy-saving windows on an old, unheated, unoccupied storage building that where the wind blows through at will, okay? You see some of that siding falling off, so I don't know that that's the best application for a super energy efficient set of windows. I don't know. Armand and I came upon this a year or two ago. All three of our FCAP teams, I think, have very interesting findings. I'm just up here showing some of these pictures. Okay. Mop sinks. Usually normally you'd have mop sinks installed in a maintenance closet with floor drains and not in high traffic corridors like here. And someday opening that little drain plug at the bottom of that mop sink for maintenance, that's going to be a problem in this corridor. Okay. Now, sometimes we inform facilities managers of buildings that had actually been forgotten for years, okay? We got to one facility that had numerous buildings, but we said, hey, we're showing in Interscope like 5 chicken coops at your place here, chicken coops. He said, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, yeah, out in the country. So we got in the truck. We go on normal roads, but we go through the country pretty often. And he took us to these 2 chicken coops. They had 3 others, I believe. And this is not far from Raleigh. But those 2 chicken coops, they are state-owned. They're each one of them bigger than 3,000 square feet, meet all the criteria. But even the chickens had abandoned these coops. We recommended that they be demolished. It can be fun being an FCAP guy. This is a wonderful DOT facility at Christmas time, and they're so creative and have a great attitude, these guys. But I don't know if you can read these ornaments slow. There's a women working ornament there on the left side on that tree. They're little jackhammer guys, bollards, signs on that Christmas tree. Again, a DOT place at Christmas time. And sometimes it can be a little sad being an FCAP inspector. Okay, I went in, this a picture I took, I went in a boiler room at an old armory, and there was a dead bird right near the gas boiler. And I don't know what got him. It may have been the CO or natural gas, whatever. Apparently that bird, you see, he was not wearing his PPE, personal protective equipment. And this is what happens, okay? So I think they took the bird away after our inspection. He may still be there 4 years from now. Okay, I'd really like to give a shout out to Isothermal Community College. This is in Rutherford County in Spindale, kind of the western part of the state. We were there on a special inspection. I'll talk about that in a minute, but at this community college, they have a tremendous CNC machining program for students at Isothermal, and they had machined out this beautiful chess set out of bar stock, aluminum and brass. It was amazing. And I'll mention community colleges. Community colleges are county owned, okay, not state owned. But periodically, sometimes we do special inspections at the community colleges, such as isothermal. Kind of getting ahead of myself, but let me say this. I'd like to give a shout out to facilities people throughout this great state who keep the wheels on at our state-owned buildings. And we came upon this sign here that reflects their can-do attitude. And I think all of us can relate to this sign. Always remember, don't force it. Get a bigger hammer. Okay? And that, I think mechanical engineers maybe relate especially well to that thought. Okay, folks, I think we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, which I think is good, sir. But I would like to say we appreciate your joining us for a brief look at some of our FCAP inspection discoveries. Hope you have a great state construction conference today. I'd like to leave you with a final thought. This is the only slide we're using today that we used last year. Final thought. This is a sign we see at our office. Up. One more. Okay, here we go. Thank you for being awesome and have a great conference. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
We're running a little ahead. If I could ask everyone to come back about 10:25 for a special guest speaker, I'd greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, just go out and feel free to network and talk with friends and family. Talk to you later.
If everybody could go ahead and take their seats, please, so we can get started again. We've got a full day. Hope everybody got a chance to get a little bit of extra caffeine, something to eat. My name is Mark Edwards. I'm the Chief Deputy Secretary at the North Carolina Department of Administration. And it's my pleasure today to introduce my boss and our special guest speaker this morning, Governor Josh Stein. Governor Stein was called to public service. Governor Stein was called to public service by his faith and his family. His faith teaches him that we are all here called to make a difference, and his parents raised his brother, sister, and him to do what is right like they did, and grounded them in our shared values of freedom and opportunity for everyone. As North Carolina's Attorney General, he is well known for clearing the nation's largest backlog of untested rape kits, combating the opioid and fentanyl crisis, and defending people's fundamental freedoms. As governor, he is bringing people together to help Western North Carolina recover from Hurricane Helene, creating economic opportunities for all North Carolinians, investing in public schools, and keeping people safe. He is also a champion for honoring the work of North Carolinians, and just this week, he signed a proclamation declaring March 2nd through 8th as Women in Construction Week. Please join me in welcoming to the podium the 76th governor of our state, Josh Stein.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. Mark Edwards, Deputy Secretary, Department of Administration. Thank you for that nice introduction. And I want to thank the Department of Administration and the State Construction Office for inviting me here today and for helping to put together this wonderful conference. And it's a pleasure to be with you all at the 44th Annual State Construction Conference. As was just mentioned, this is Women in Construction Week. It's a time when we celebrate and highlight the achievements of contributions of women in the construction industry. And I want to take a moment just to recognize the women in the construction industry. And if you're an architect, an engineer, a contractor, or subcontractor, and a woman, please stand if you would. That's great. I want to thank you for all you do to play your role in the vitalization of North Carolina and for being an inspiration to young women who are interested in STEM careers. It is a strategic imperative that we broaden the appeal of the construction industry because it's a shrinking workforce. Retirements are outpacing new hiring, which presents an emerging challenge for our state because North Carolina is on the rise. We're the third fastest growing state in the country since the last census. That means more houses, roads, schools, hospitals, everything. So there's a lot of great work to do to help keep building this state that we love. And to meet this moment, we have to invest in our construction talent pipeline and investing in the attractiveness of half of the state's population makes good business sense. I'm committed to partnering with all of you to build that workforce with the education and experience needed to continue powering the construction industry and to ensure that North Carolinians across the state have the ability to build a career. We have a diverse and growing economy here in North Carolina. We're blessed. So we need multiple strategies to maximize our workforce. From our local workforce boards to our community colleges and universities, from industry to our philanthropic partners. And we must remember that the foundation of North Carolina's workforce is public education, including pre-kindergarten. For the past 2 years, North Carolina has been recognized as a top 3 state for workforce. So we've seen success, but to stay competitive, we must remain aggressive. As your governor, I'm committed to increasing economic opportunity for everyone, employers and employees alike, by increasing the number of skilled workers who can build a career here in North Carolina. No state will outwork North Carolina on workforce development while I am governor. Our goal is to set the national pace in growing more skilled workers, including increasing the number of apprentices over the next 4 years by 100% and helping more than 350,000 North Carolinians secure industry-valued credentials. There are several apprenticeship programs across the state, including 2 I recently visited, one at Wake Tech and one at Blue Ridge Community College, where community college students are partnering with the construction industry to help students learn the skills that they need to pursue a career in construction and to earn industry-relevant credentials while they're at it. We have to expand these models so that we're shoring up the construction workforce and also connecting our students to meaningful careers. We have a great deal of work as well to help rebuild Western North Carolina. I'm a little more casual than I usually am because I'm headed there from here. Hurricane Helene tragically took more than 100 lives and destroyed our roads, bridges, buildings, homes, and communities. We've made progress on the recovery front over the past 5 months, but it is clear that there is so much more work to do to restore and rebuild. Last month, I was in Washington, D.C., meeting with our U.S. senators, urging for $19 billion in federal funds to help assist. Earlier, I had asked the General Assembly for an initial needs budget of $1 billion. They are moving forward with a bill that's $500 million. It's not all that I wanted, but it will enable us to get going, which is the most important thing, is we cannot miss an entire construction season in the mountains, and without the money, we can't get started. My hope and expectation is that our U.S. congressional delegation and the General Assembly will continue to advocate and fund these efforts. We want there to be more opportunities for the architects, for the engineers, for the contractors, and others in this room who can contribute to the work of rebuilding Western North Carolina. And I hope that each of you find some way to apply your talents to the great needs of our state. 2 of the biggest construction-related challenges facing the state are building that pipeline to produce a talented workforce and helping Western North Carolina rebuild. And just like each of you, I am committed to addressing both of those tasks with all my energy. I look forward to partnering with you all as we do just that and as we build a North Carolina that is safer, stronger, and more prosperous for everyone. Thank you, and I wish you all an excellent conference.
Our next speaker didn't know he was going to follow the governor. I don't know if he would have came. Our next speaker is Kenneth Simonson. Ken Simonson has been chief economist for the Associated General Contractors of America, the leading construction trade association since 2001. He provides insight into the economy and what it implies for construction and related industries through frequent media interviews, presentations, and the Data Digest, his weekly one-page e-newsletter that goes to more than 20,000 subscribers. Ken has over 40 years of experience analyzing, advocating, and communicating about economic and tax issues. He currently serves as an advisor to the Census Bureau's Construction Data Reengineering Initiative. He is a fellow and past president of the National Association of Business Economics, and he is also co-director of the Tax Economists Forum, a professional meeting group he co-founded in 1982. Ken is a BA in economics from the University of Chicago and an MA in economics from Northwestern University. Please join me in welcoming Ken Simonson.
Well, thank you for having me once again. It's always a treat to come to this, my largest event of the year, and I think you're now the record holder for the audience that's had me back the most times. I think most of you are familiar with the name AGC. We have 88 chapters around the country, and our largest, our only two-state chapter, the Carolinas AGC, ably represented here today by Betsy Bailey, who's standing in the front row. And I hope that if you haven't interacted with AGC, you will talk to Betsy later, or just go to carolinasagc.org to learn more about how they can help you, or you can get involved with them. What I want to talk about today is kind of a two-part presentation. I sent these slides in a week or so ago, and so far as they go, they're still the story, but that story does keep changing by the hour. In fact, within the last hour, a judge ruled that the administration, the Trump administration, could not freeze spending that had already been committed to the states. So that should be good news here in North Carolina. So let me start with what data we do have showing what's happened in the recent past and what contractors were expecting for the year ahead. North Carolina has been doing great in terms of adding construction jobs ever since the pandemic hit now more than 5 years ago. The slide shows the year-over-year change in construction employment in red in North Carolina, in black in the U.S. And while you did have a considerable sharp drop at the beginning of the pandemic, lost 5% of your construction jobs, it was only a third as great as what happened nationwide. And you immediately started adding jobs at a greater rate than the country. You were back to your February 2020 level before the end of the year, whereas it took 2 full years for the nation to get back to that level. And since then, you've continued to add jobs. In the last year up through December, a 3.3% increase, a little ahead of the 2.4 nationally. And the cumulative change, much greater, 15% compared to 9% nationally. In fact, all over the state, North Carolina has been adding construction jobs at least a 1% rate in the Greensboro High Point metro area, and as great as 5% just west of here in the Durham Chapel Hill metro area, and 2% here in the capital region. North Carolina fits in with the majority of states. In 2024, 38 states and DC added construction employees. And I do think that for the time being, that trend will continue. In fact, contractors in North Carolina were very optimistic when we surveyed them in November and December. For me, the key question in that survey is, do you expect the dollar value of projects available to bid on in the coming year to be higher or lower than the year before? And I take the difference between the percent who say higher minus the percent who say lower and turn that into what we call a net reading. So the bars measure that differential. To take the very first number, data centers. Nationally, it shows a net positive of 42. That is, if 71% of respondents said the market's going to grow, 29% said it's going to shrink, the difference between that numbers is that 42 that you see up there. In fact, for 15 of the 17 categories that we asked about, contractors on the whole were more optimistic than pessimistic. In North Carolina, it was 16 out of 17. And in general, you were even more optimistic in many of these categories. In the case of data centers, that net positive reading was 42 nationally, 40 in North Carolina. So very strong. But what's distinctive in North Carolina, you were way more positive about power construction, up a net 65 percentage points, twice as strong a net optimistic reading as nationally. And for water and sewer projects, a net optimism of 55 percentage points. Similarly, much more optimistic about transportation projects, such as the airport modernizations and expansions that I've experienced in Raleigh and in Charlotte and elsewhere around the state. And then going through most of the list, more positive. In fact, one that was negative nationally, although only slightly and much less negative than a year ago, private office here in North Carolina, you're slightly positive in your reading. The only place that you were notably less optimistic than nationally, warehouse construction, where the net reading nationally was a plus 14. Here, you were evenly split between ones expecting it to grow and to shrink. And frankly, I think you guys have it right. I'll talk a little more about my own expectations later, but let me show you a couple of other survey results. First of all, we ask each year, have you won a project under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021? And nationally, 18% of respondents said yes, they had won a project, but here in North Carolina, 39%. So I think this talks to the nimbleness of your state and local agencies in making sure that all those grandiose White House and federal agency announcements about projects that would be happening, that you were able to turn them into reality and award contracts. We ask about what firms expect to do. Are they going to expand or shrink their own headcount going forward? And being contractors, they're always optimistic on net. This year, 69% said, yeah, they would be expanding their headcount. That was exactly the percentage that we saw a year ago. But here in North Carolina, it was almost unanimous. 88% said that they would be expanding. Only 3% said that their headcount was going to shrink. But you're also realistic about how difficult that is. So nationally and here, over half of respondents said it'll be even harder to find workers than it was a year ago. And we do a survey every summer about hiring conditions. And last year, 94% of firms that directly hire craft workers, as distinguished from firms that are turning to subcontractors, 94% said they had an opening on June 30th. And of those firms, 94% said positions were hard to fill. So to have half the firms say it's going to be even harder says it will be plenty hard. One last survey result. We give contractors a choice of 19 items that they could list as major concerns. We don't limit the number of things that they check off. And then there's also space for write-ins. This year was notable that quite a few respondents wrote in tariffs, even though we hadn't asked specifically about that. Of the pre-populated choices, the top concerns, both nationally and even more so here in North Carolina, related to labor. Number one, rising direct labor costs such as pay, benefit, and employee taxes. Well, here in North Carolina, that was actually aced out a little bit by even more people saying an insufficient supply of workers or subcontractors. So that fit right in line with that concern about workers being even harder to find or positions even harder to fill than before. And number three, by strong margin, worker quality. Now, a year ago, when we asked about the same lists, the top three items were materials costs, a threat of economic slowdown or even recession, high interest rate and financing costs. Those are still widely mentioned concerns, but they had dropped way down the list in this survey, which we opened 2 days after Election Day, closed just before the Federal Open Market Committee met in December and put a pause on reduced interest rates. So much has happened in the 3 months since things closed that I'm very tempted to put that survey question out again, but I also am respectful of how much we're imposing on our members to fill out surveys. So I think we'll wait until summer and do our usual summer survey, but add some of these questions in. So these responses, that's how contractors saw it in December, and we'll just have to wait and see how they view things now. What's happening with labor costs? Well, construction firms have always paid what I call a premium to get people to put up with working outdoors in the kinds of volatile weather conditions you had yesterday and start work earlier than I like to even get up in the morning. That premium, as I call it, can be measured by looking at a series that comes out with the employment report that we'll be getting tomorrow morning, called Average Hourly Earnings for Production and Non-Supervisory Employees. That's a long mouthful to describe average wages for craft workers and office workers who aren't supervisors in construction. And I compare that to the average wage for production workers throughout the private sector. And while these lines wiggle around, there is a slight upward trend. Certainly none of them are decreasing. And the table at the right shows that premium to get people to work in non-residential building construction, 28% more than the average for the total private sector. And for heavy and civil engineering construction firms, 25% more. And right down the list, every construction segment is paying that premium, as I call it. Well, where are things going to head? That's where it gets tricky. The black line here shows that average hourly earnings series in construction for all employees, including the office and the management, superintendents, and so forth. And while, again, that line isn't dead level, it has stayed around a 4 to 5.5% rate of increase for really 4 years now. The latest reading, and again, we'll get this updated tomorrow, a 4.1% increase in those wages for all employees. Now, I think that's actually a floor. I think we're headed more toward the 5% range. We get two other pieces of information about wages, and they both support the notion that we're going to stay above 4. For union employees, and I realize that's not a widespread part of the construction industry here, but nationally there's a group that AGC and other associations support called the Construction Labor Research Council. And they analyze all union settlements around the country and also divide it by craft. And they found that nationally last year, those union settlements averaged 4.7%. That was a lot more than the settlements they had replaced 3 years ago. And in fact, while the average was the same as in 2023, if you break it down, there were far more settlements that were coming in above a 6.5% increase. So the progression is definitely moving toward the upper side. We also get information from a company called PAS, which has surveyed construction firms about salary for exempt employees and executives for over 40 years. And their finding was that in 2024, firms expected to pay a little over 4%, but in fact, their expectations had always come in low, and they were expecting it would be more like 4.6 or 7%. So I think we have built that floor in already. And with the continuing demand for workers, it could go even higher in 2025. And that's even without taking into account the limitations on immigration and deportations, whether they're actual mass deportations or just the rumor of deportations. I've already myself talked to a contractor who experienced this impact and read some news stories in different parts of the country that when subcontractors, workers hear that ICE is going to stage a raid or that there may be some other actions, that they disappear from visible job sites. And it's pretty darn disruptive to try to find replacement workers, particularly in this tight job market. So I do think that if we see this action spreading, we're going to have much more difficulty finding workers. We're going to have to pay more overtime for those who are on the job, and the search costs and other labor-related costs will go even higher than this 4 to 5% rate of increase that you've been seeing in labor costs. Well, let me talk about the red line here, which is certainly much more volatile. This shows the change in the producer price index for inputs to new non-residential construction. That's a weighted average of the cost of all materials and services, such as your design services from the many architects I've talked to out here, engineering firms, and also transportation services for goods being delivered to jobs. And starting at the far left, you can see that this index actually declined at the beginning of the pandemic. The economy shut down so much that many prices dropped, but that turned around in a big hurry. I'm sure you all remember the record prices for lumber, steel, copper, diesel fuel, much more frequent and steeper price increases than usual for things as varied as insulation materials, roofing materials, and after that giant freeze in Texas in February 2021, construction plastics, whether it was PVC pipe or roofing or insulation or geotextiles. Well, for 12 straight months, that index went up at a 20% or greater rate. You may recall that the peak for consumer prices was 9.1%. That was in a single month of June of 2022. At that point, construction prices were going up almost 24%. After that, both cooled off. In fact, construction prices actually declined again compared to the same month of the year before in much of 2023. I think when I was here a year ago, I was saying, well, those good times were over. We should expect modest materials cost increases in 2024. And you can see that that's how the year started out. But fortunately, the markets really cooled off again, and we had a few months where that price dipped below the 2023 level, even though that had already come down a lot. And just in January, prices were up only 0.4% from the year before. But when you look at the cumulative increase since February of 2022, that number at the top right, 38% for construction costs compared to 23% for consumers. Consumers are rightly still bitter about the inflation that they have experienced over 5 years and how prices never came back down to where they were. Well, for construction, it's all the worse. And that's an average. When you look at specific materials, the cumulative increase for copper and brass mill shapes, 71%. For steel mill products, 43%. And for diesel fuel, 58%. Well, of course, this is only prices that were collected as of January 11th. What's happened since then, and what can we expect going forward? Well, since then, we saw copper futures move up quite a bit. Diesel prices, which had been going down for much of the year, also turned around and moved up. And steel mill prices, hot rolled coil, went from as low as $650 per ton to quotes of over $900 a ton, rumors of $1,000 a ton. That was yesterday's story. Well, today we're in a world where some tariffs have actually taken hold, where we're waiting to see what happens next Wednesday when supposed to be hit with still more steep tariffs and yet more on April 2nd. So, but we've also seen at least a temporary rollback of tariffs on Canadian and Mexican automobiles that went in on Tuesday morning, were pulled back, but supposedly only for a month. So I would say we're in a moment of maximum uncertainty about what tariffs are actually going to be imposed, at what rate, what countries, what products, what exemptions or waivers, if any, and how long will they stick before the next tariff announcement happens. These are all things that the president can do unilaterally and can change at will. So it's quite different from money that Congress has appropriated. The contracts have already been awarded. Seemingly the federal government is committed to. But as we've again seen in the last 6 weeks, even those things carry less certainty than they had. Well, I know it's my job as an economist to provide a forecast. I pity those of you who are actual estimators or who are actually receiving bids or trying to explain to your legislatures or mayors or county councils how much money you'll actually need. So I'll stick my neck this far out and say, I do expect that materials costs, well, let me say that a month ago, I was saying materials costs likely to go up 1 to 3% this year. We probably hit bottom on steel and diesel fuel, and copper was beginning to go up. But now I would say, yes, that 1 to 3%, if we don't get other dramatic shocks, but with the likelihood that at least some of these tariffs are going to be around for at least a while, I would say it's more prudent to expect 4 to 5% increases, but you really have to look very much at the specific items that you are going to be purchasing, what the source is, and really stay up to date by the hour on what's to be expected. In addition to forthcoming tariffs of 25% on steel and aluminum, 25% tariff on lumber is being studied, so-called retaliatory tariffs on anything across the world could raise prices for specific materials very steeply. And the chief economist of the National Association of Home Builders was warning Monday, I heard him speak about this. There's a longstanding tariff on Canadian softwood lumber that gets adjusted through a kind of an arcane process, but the latest level that was set several years ago, 14.5%, he said it appears likely that's going to be reset at 30%, but on top of that, the 25% tariff on Canada and the 25% tariff on lumber could drive those lumber prices up as much as 80%. And again, we're not sure of the effective dates on most of those. The 25% across the board on Canada already in effect. The other two, not sure when that might happen, but that's an item that could have really extreme price increases. Fortunately, that's an item for which there is some supply available in the U.S., particularly here in the Southeast, and also from other foreign producers, although they're likely to be subject to tariffs. And if the goods are arriving in Chinese ships, in addition to tariffs, there's the threat of enormous fees anytime a Chinese ship calls on a U.S. port. So this could affect any delivery to Wilmington or the ports in Norfolk or Charleston or Savannah, let alone West Coast ports. So yet another element of uncertainty on what you would pay, not just for imported goods, but if you're buying from a U.S. supplier, you can bet they're keeping an eye on whatever the importer is charging. When the first 25% Trump tariffs on steel went into effect, U.S. steel producers raised their prices almost in tandem. Now there's quite a bit of unused steelmaking capacity. There are more plants that are being built. So it's not as sure that the steel prices on domestic steel will go up that much. If they don't, importers are likely to eat part of that price increase. But it is possible that both will happen. With aluminum, much more likely. We have been reducing our aluminum making capacity for decades now, as our electricity costs are so much higher than in other parts of the world. And with the huge demand for electricity for data centers, including here in North Carolina, and somewhat for EV and other computing needs for charging electric vehicles and so forth, I think electricity costs are definitely headed higher. The uncertainty about how long aluminum tariffs would last, how long it takes to build a plant, the lack of skilled workers to work in those plants. I think it's very unlikely we'd get new aluminum making capacity that would keep the current producers from raising their prices. So I think the aluminum price increase is very much a sure thing. Steel price increase is going to go up by some amount. Lumber, less certain, but potential for an even steeper increase. Let me turn to what's happening with construction spending in different categories. These figures come from the Census Bureau on the first business day of each month. We did get January figures on Monday, and they showed a continuing slowdown in that total construction figure. For 2024, construction spending for the year as a whole was up more than 6%, but the December over December change, 4%. By January, it had shrunk to 3%. The slowdown has happened mainly on non-residential categories. The one exception, data center construction, just is blowing right off the charts, up 46% from January to January. So no slowdown there, but very much so across many of the other categories. Manufacturing construction still looks great. It was up 11% from December to December, but that had been following increases of well over 20%. And in the last 8 months, really since May, manufacturing construction has moved sideways. Those of you who follow the build out of or announcements about EV plants, still waiting to hear if VinFast is going to build that big plant in North Carolina that they had talked about. And most of the other EV plants have either been scaled back, changed into building hybrid or even ICE engines, internal combustion engines. The battery plants, similarly, the production time stretched out or scaled back or canceled altogether. So that side of manufacturing construction really looking for a slowdown. For other kinds of plants, though, yes, we may get some new plants in order to avoid tariffs or to shorten supply chains or to supply new industries. But if the tariffs take hold, particularly on steel, but also just the uncertainty, it's causing a lot of investors to postpone decisions or say, wait a minute, my exports are going to be hit by retaliation by other countries, or my input costs are going up by 25%. I can't afford to build a new plant or to expand, or I can't take the chance that these tariffs that haven't yet taken effect, that they're actually going to go away. So I think manufacturing construction will still be positive because so much has already been launched, but much slower growth. For transportation, the airport work is likely to keep going full tilt for now. So that looks like it's in much better shape. Education construction, though, a lot of challenges here because universities depend very heavily on federal grants for research projects in all kinds of areas. And those have been hit very hard. The rhetoric very negative against leading universities such as Duke, but also some of the state universities on the research side. Just this morning, I was reading how University of Pennsylvania and Columbia are retracting a lot of offers they had made to PhD candidates because they don't expect to have the funding available for them. So a lot of turmoil in what kinds of advanced programs universities are going to be able to fund. And Then with the Trump saying today he's issuing an executive order to do away with the U.S. Department of Education. Can't literally abolish the department, but again, it's creating a lot of uncertainty about what federal money is going to flow through, not just for research, but for supporting all kinds of special needs, adult, veteran students, and others. What's going to happen to Pell Grants, to the federal application for financial student aid. Just a huge amount of uncertainty that's going to hit universities of all kinds, from community colleges to NC State and UNC and its many campuses. It's great to hear the governor talk about wanting to support career and technical education. AGC has been trying to tell Congress and administrations for many years that we need to balance off and provide more support for career and technical ed, where we have far more adults who do not have BAs than we have them, and more job openings, more career opportunities. But again, uncertain whether the federal government, at least, is going to be providing support for career and technical education at the level we need. K through 12 schools, different challenges there in terms of how much citizen support is there for school districts going forward. And then education, also to the extent that universities or school districts are issuing bonds, a lot of uncertainty about where that long-term bond rate is going to be. It moved up quite a bit on the expectation of higher deficits. Just in the last week, that bond rate has been coming down, but not for good reason. It's because businesses and consumers and forecasters are all suddenly saying, wait a minute, we think the prospects for the economy have gotten a lot worse. We may actually be in recession, according to one measure. I don't think it's that dire, but I do think that we're not going to see the level of economic growth we had. So again, uncertainty about the cost of financing for long-term projects. Power construction, slight growth. The Energy Information Administration reported last week that it expects record growth in solar construction, solar power generation coming on stream, and also battery scale, utility scale battery storage. So those are the two growth markets for power construction. They also expect some pickup in wind construction, although they note that there are huge challenges to getting that offshore wind that North Carolina may have been counting on building. I think that's very questionable. Natural gas power does look like it's coming back, where you can get the hookups for that. Categories that were in negative territory in this particular snapshot. Healthcare had slipped from positive to negative. Again, uncertainty, particularly about federal funding for research, but also direct support for hospitals. Highway and street construction, I think that this has a positive outlook for 2025 and beyond. Commercial is a term that gets used in a lot of different ways. For census, it means warehouse, retail, and farm construction. Warehouse construction, the big generic 1 million square foot warehouses, the vacancy rates have really shot up. There's still demand for last mile distribution facilities inside metro areas, for warehouses near manufacturing plants that are being created or near ports that are expanding. But I think on net, warehouse will still be negative. Retail, certainly a shifting market to where people have moved. And as the governor said, North Carolina is way up there on the list of states that have added population. So that's a positive for retail. It will be very mixed by location. And then the private office market remaining negative. I don't see that turning around anytime soon. So there is a lot more detail on the Census Bureau website. I'm not going to drag you through this further. I've already mentioned a lot of these subcategories. Just to say, the ones in black are positive year over year. The ones in red, mostly subcategories, are negative compared to the previous 12 months. If you want the slides, I'd be happy to send them out, and it will show the January figures, so they will be somewhat different from this. Let me wrap up then. Coming into the new administration, well, let me say, from Election Day on, I thought uncertainty had jumped a lot from where we were before. From Inauguration Day right to the last hour, I'd say uncertainty keeps jumping still more as we see more radical decisions announced, whether they're shutdowns of government agencies, layoffs of 80,000 Department of Veterans Affairs employees, or court decisions reversing some of the decisions that have already happened, or announcements of tariffs and then exceptions to them, or delays in imposition of other tariffs. So all of those things really make it hard to plan, hard to forecast with any confidence, but never in doubt, often wrong. That's my motto. I'll go ahead and say I do expect higher tariffs are going to raise costs, but can't say where. Harsh immigration, deportation policies, huge risk for construction compared to many industries, but others such as hospitality, agricultural, both harvesting and food processing, important here, also vulnerable. Nationally, 18% of workers are foreign-born. In construction trades, it's 34%. It varies a lot by state. North Carolina, not one of the high immigrant states for construction crafts, but you will be affected. I'll add a map to my PowerPoint that shows the percentage in each state. But even states where it's not as high a percentage currently, you're certainly vulnerable to the extent that if those workers leave, they've got to be replaced. If there are more of them in other sectors, those sectors are going to be bidding for some of the workers that you would have had. And just generally, the loss of foreign-born workers is a net negative for the economy, that they are contributing more than they are using in government services. They cause their departure would cause big disruptions to supply chains. So we've already seen long-lasting, no improvement that I know of in the supply chain for transformers and for switchgear, for instance. Fortunately, most other supply chains seem to be working well. You may have some issues related to suddenly sending materials that are vitally needed for the recovery from Helene, stretching out supply chains for certain items. But by and large, the U.S. economy, the transportation networks are working well. Great that I-40 has been reopened, at least partially. So I think supply chain's not an issue for the most part now, but the tariffs could cause disruption in a number of ways. First, abrupt shifts in where goods are brought in from. If you try to switch from a foreign producer to a domestic one, you may find that they're already swamped with orders and you're way down on the order list, or you may be hit with much higher port fees. So a lot of ways that tariffs could be disruptive, not just to costs, but to supply chains. The expectation of larger deficits we saw did push up long-term interest rates. They are likely to stay higher than they might have. But if really the market expects a weaker economy, that will work against the higher interest rates, but it does add again to the uncertainty. Clearly, this administration less supportive of renewables. And so that, I think, is bad news for the incipient offshore wind industry here in North Carolina. On the possibly good news side, a lot of federal regulations that have been proposed were stopped on day one by Trump. And many of those will now never go into effect. Others are going to be rolled back. But don't get too excited, because so much building construction is governed by state agency regulations and by local regulations, and the federal government won't be touching those. I think single-family construction will pick up gradually. Mortgage rates have stayed stubbornly high. The reading that we got a week ago from Freddie Mac, and we'll get a new one in about 50 43 minutes, 6.76%, a little better than the 7% it was brushing up against a few weeks ago, but a lot higher than those of us who were fortunate enough to get mortgages for 4 or 3 or even less percent, keeping many people rate locked, as they say, into their homes, and many other people priced out of buying a first home. So I think the increase in single family will be very modest. Multifamily construction, Raleigh and Charlotte, many of your smaller markets saw a boom in multifamily construction from the time people moved from denser locations to more pleasant climates and more recreational opportunities here in North Carolina. That has played out for now. I don't expect many more people to be moving, as the return to office requirement increases, some people leaving from those resort areas or unfortunately pushed out by hurricanes or now wildfires, very much out of season, but a lot of things that make living in those pleasant coastal or Gulf communities or mountain areas not as pleasant as they seemed. So while there has been a little overshoot in building multifamily, I think it will be absorbed by the end of this year in fast growth states like North Carolina. So that should come back. Warehouse, the demand for goods is going to be depressed by a slower growing economy. So I don't expect warehouse to come back soon. Private office, even with more people being called back to the office, it doesn't mean they'll go to bigger or new offices. AGC of America, for instance, we're going to move from this building we've been in since it was new, not quite 20 years ago. We're going cat-a-corner to a building that's much older. It's been renovated, but we're taking about 1/3 less space. To my deep regret, I'll be giving up my private office with all my quirky personal mementos, going into whatever space is available that day, if there is even enough space. Or into the dreaded open area or the coffee shop across the street. So I don't expect to see a pickup in office construction anytime soon. The growth areas, data centers, just unlimited demand. The constraints on it are, can you get power anytime in the next few years? Are you in a neighborhood where the neighbors don't object to yet another big white box with fans on the roof going 24/7? And in some parts of the country, will there be enough water to cool those servers working all the time? But data center construction, I think, will keep going certainly through 2025, 2026 at an even higher rate. Well, I can't say higher than the current 45% growth rate, but at staggering to compound at something like that. And then infrastructure, as I mentioned, some pickup in highways that had that temporary slackening in airports. Water and sewer has been doing very well for a number of years. May finally get some money for broadband for underserved areas, but trending away from federal support for renewables, whether it's for carbon capture or for EV charging stations. Materials costs, get out the dartboard and throw a number at it. So I've got 1 to 3% up there. I'm saying that with the fingers crossed. Labor costs 4 to 5%, unless we see a real loss of foreign-born labor. Here's the map that shows how population has changed in the last 12 months. The governor talked about since the census was taken on April 1st, North Carolina was ranked third. Just in the last year, that slowed down a little bit, but still very much in the top 10. You have neighbors around you that are also growing faster than that national rate, which was at a 23-year high of 1%. But I have to say that of that national growth rate, 84% of the growth came from net immigration. So once again, some uncertainty about whether growth will continue. 18 states, I don't think North Carolina was among them, 18 states would have lost population if it hadn't been for net immigration. Here in North Carolina, not nearly as affected by international immigration, but still it will have an impact. So on that very uncertain note, let me close so you can get to lunch. But by all means, email me at ken.simonson, SIMONSON, at AGC for Associated General Contractors.org. And I'll send you an updated list of my slides. Can't guarantee that by the time you open it, it'll still be current given all the policy changes. But I'll also add you to the email list for the Data Digest. As Michael mentioned, it's a weekly summary of economic news relevant to construction. Weekly used to be frequent enough to keep you up to date, but I won't bombard your email box more often than that. But I certainly would love to get copies of any dear valued customer letters, price announcements, supply chain announcements, anything else that you think is relevant to describing the latest changes in construction as it affects you. So thanks very much. Don't want to hold you in your seats, but if you want to talk to me individually, I will be around for a while. And have a great rest of the conference and a great rest of the year.
Just a couple things before we break for lunch. If you're a speaker, have a dot on your name tag. You'll be able to get in another door to get lunch, so you can make sure you get to your speaking engagement. Before we break for lunch, we're going to have Bob Talley come up and give us the invocation. And I hope you enjoy the afternoon sessions. Thank you.
I invite you to pray with me. Storms are on our minds today. The storm that flooded mountains, uprooted ancient trees, crumbled highways, carried off families, and caused so much destruction and grief for our brothers and sisters to the west. The storm that rages as countries battle over territory and the right to choose, and we see images of decimated landscapes, wailing mothers, and thousand-yard stares. The storm we call cancer that even now is raging in the bodies of many of our friends, neighbors, coworkers, and family members. We see the baggy clothes, the thinning locks, the slowing pace. We see the effects of the storms, and we pray for fortitude to stand up and be the kinds of neighbor, friend, countrymen that those victims need. We pray for wisdom to make wise choices as we rebuild communities and restore hope. We pray for courage to stand by the side of those in need, to be present and open, to seek understanding. May the food of this meal and the focus of this gathering provide the strength each of us needs to make a difference in rebuilding communities, protecting the innocent, and weathering the storms that are ever present. Amen. Have a good lunch.
All right.